everyone. Good morning. Welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter.
You have enough papers.
Right.
You got to condense yourself. Like, look at you.
What are you talking about?
Now the desk is starting to look like your office.
This is his.
What are you talking about?
All that stuff is his, except the paper.
Depth chart, schedule,
New York
standings.
looking ready for next year's spring training.
Week
I love
one
it.
results,
I just looked at that. 154
numbers,
days,
rundown.
pitchers and catchers.
Eat it, Pep.
Yeah,
Joe,
I got everything organized,
your bad
Chris.
kickball leg. Let's go.
We're having three different conversations.
Okay.
Let's
but
go.
I like my
Three
papers.
completely different conversations.
Jenna, your dress looks lovely.
Thank you so much. I love both of your suits.
Thank you so much.
We finally have football to talk about. Football that happened. Big Monday show for you. So Baker and the Browns got off to a rough start. Dak and Zeke got off to a great start with the Cowboys, but we got to start with the game that basically just ended a few hours ago with the team that made the biggest headlines all weekend. Sunday Night Football, Steelers, and the newly minted six-time Super Bowl champion Patriots. We'll get to the newest Patriot in a second, but the game itself, this was all New England. 42-year-old Tom Brady threw for 341 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Steelers. 2 touchdowns to Phillip Dorsett, 1 to Josh Gordon, blowing out Pittsburgh 33-3 to open the season. Here's more now from Tom Brady.
The big plays really helped us tonight, and they'll help us every week if we keep making them. But I think, it's got to be different things every week, and sometimes it's big plays, sometimes it's more methodical drives, and, whatever they're going to defend, we've got to figure out how to execute against. So that's what, we'll get back to work again. It's the first game of the year, so there's a lot to learn from. A lot of new players out there. We're going to try to build on, tonight and try to get to 2-0.
Tom Fonzie Brady with a nice post-game look at 42 years old. See how impressive were the Patriots last night against the Steelers?
Very impressive. Very impressive with them, with all the distractions as far as unveiling a new banner, their 6th championship, facing the only team in the NFL that's got 6 championships, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers have the whole offseason to get ready for this. They're talking about their overall chemistry. Man, everyone in the organization's got a breath of fresh air, but when you don't have talent, I don't care how much air you got. I don't care how much chemistry you got in the locker room. But they were totally outclassed from the beginning. We didn't know what New England was going to do offensively. We didn't know what their wide receiving crew, last couple weeks of the preseason, didn't know who was going to play. But they decided that our skilled guys are better than your skilled guys. And the offensive line did a great job as far as protecting them, but they decided, I'm going to attack their secondary, especially their safeties in the middle of the field, and that's what Tom Brady did. I'm not going to overreact to week number 1, but I'm just going to tell you, everyone in the AFC is playing for 2nd place, and it's just a matter of how many games are Tom Brady and the Patriots, because if he stays healthy, they're going to win at least 14 games, Jenna. Like, they don't even have a contest until at least the middle of the season. So we typically say if you're going to beat the Pats, get them early.
Beat them now.
Oh, you're not going to be able to do that because we saw what they did to Pittsburgh. You're going to go down to Miami next week, destroy them. Then they're going to go through the AFC East being Buffalo and the Jets. And then they're going to get some of the Giants. I mean, they don't have anyone. And the Browns, like week number 8. So 14-2, Jenna. So your Super Bowl pick, they will be home field advantage. Yeah, I know Kansas City played yesterday, but if they keep Tom Brady healthy, and they're the only team that got better yesterday, even though they played the game, because they're going to sign a player today that only enhances everything else they do, Nick.
They don't play a playoff team, to your point, a playoff team from last year until week 9 at Baltimore. Week 8, Cleveland, they obviously didn't make the playoffs. Week 9, Baltimore. We said when we looked at their schedule, something I love to do, if they get through Pittsburgh, 7-0, 6-1 at a minimum looks likely through 7 weeks, and they looked great last night. And the defense was spectacular, and the offensive line was good, even though it dealt with another injury. But I want to start with the guy right in the center stage right there in Tom Brady. Wait, I don't want us to be numb to what Brady's just did last night at age 42. Became the first player that age to throw 3 touchdown passes in a game since a guy named George Blanda. George Blanda, who was a kicker and a quarterback, played in the 50s, 60s, and then into the very early 1970s. It was quite literally a different era, almost literally a different sport. The last time we saw someone at this age have that type of game. The closest we had seen is a 41-and-a-half-year-old Warren Moon, who, Chris, you say might be the best athlete to ever play the position of quarterback. One of the greatest, most skilled quarterbacks we've ever seen in Warren Moon, and Tom Brady did it and made it look easy. And Tom Brady just continued his domination over what is supposed to be his biggest rivals since he's been in the league. How about Phillip Rivers? That's a potential future Hall of Fame quarterback on a team that has consistently been good during Brady's era. Yeah, he's never lost to him. How about Andrew Luck, who was supposed to be the guy who took the torch from Brady? Yeah, he never lost to him. And how about the Steelers, the second best team in the conference this era in that building? Yeah, he's never lost to them. 6-0, now 18 touchdowns, a 125 quarterback rating, and averaging 36 points per game. Like, maybe we're surprised by the 3 in the 33-3 for Pittsburgh, but no one should be surprised that Tom Brady carved them up, because in that building, that's what he's been doing his entire career against that team.
Well, it certainly helps that he had people to throw to. I'm old enough to remember a conversation we had, it was last week, that they might not have enough weapons, whether it's the receiving core, whether it's replacing Rob Gronkowski. They haven't even gotten Antonio Brown yet, and they look like they're going to be just fine. How much better does AB now make the team that you saw out there last night?
Well, first we have to realize Pittsburgh hadn't had a top 10 defense in a long time. That's not a top 10 defense. That's definitely not a top 10 secondary. So, yes, their wide receivers, they were a question mark. Why? Because we didn't see him. Edelman had broke his thumb in training camp, missed a lot of camp. We've seen Phillip Dorsett. We know that he is not a consistent starter. Josh, the conversation wasn't about ability. It's about availability. And Demaryius not only was recovering from Achilles beyond 30, but he also has a bad hamstring, and we haven't seen him play good football in several years. So it's not as if those questions weren't legitimate. But when you don't have a pass rush, you only hit Tom Brady 5 times, you get 1 sack, he's going to carve you up. I don't care who the wide receivers are. And their wide receivers, the group of them, look at the plays. Because outside of Josh's catch and run, the plays they were running, the guys were running wide open. So that's by design. So, yes, we give Tom Brady credit. He's playing at an elite level still. But they have more than enough weapons, and they're getting a weapon that at everything that they do, Josh Gordon, everything that he does as a football player, there's nothing he does better than AB besides be big. If you want to run quick slants with Josh, run deep ends, AB is better at that than him. Phillip Dorsett, he's a better speed receiver, game speed, than Phillip Dorsett. He's a better route runner in the slot than Edelman. He's got more speed than him. Now, does he know more football? Does he play the game smarter? I don't know that. But their lack of depth on the offensive line, their lack of having a quality tight end, it will be hidden because of the wide receivers now being a strength, just like their defense and their defensive secondary.
Antonio Brown on the field is the perfect fit for New England because of what Cris said. He can play all 3 positions, can play them at an incredibly high level. I know.
Well, I don't know if he can learn all 3. I don't know that. He's played in the Pittsburgh system his whole career. I wouldn't give him credit for that yet.
Well, the point
New England's system has slowed down a bunch of wide receivers. Now, Randy Moss is a football savant. I knew he would adapt to it, and he sucked it up. That's why he had an immediate impact, and he had offseason and training camp. AB is coming, no training camp, no OTAs, so they got to try to find a position for him that he can play fast in before he can play all of them.
But with all that, agreed, but with all that said, the point I'm making is he's a guy who has, in his time in Pittsburgh, played all 3 wide receiver positions, and to Chris's point, played them all at an incredibly high level. On the field, he is ideal once he gets an understanding of the offense, once he gets in the flow of things. The question is, and we will get to find this out in real time, was Antonio Brown intentionally sabotaging his way out of Oakland in order to get to New England? If that's the case, then this probably will work, and he probably will last. Or did Antonio Brown sabotage himself out of Oakland not intentionally, in which case, why on earth do we think a guy who couldn't take a fine for skipping practice is going to take criticism in meetings? Why do we think a guy who was scrolling bank balances in meetings is going to work well in the New England system? If he just simply decided a few months into Oakland, a few weeks ago, whenever, man, I want to get out of here, and my agent told me, if they do cut me, I think I got a soft landing in New England, England, so I'm just going to keep upping the ante. I'm going to threaten to fight the coach. That's not enough. Or threaten to fight the GM. I'm going to record the coach. All right, that's not enough. All right, I'm just going to flatly say release me until you finally do it. Then that's one thing, and that could create other issues about how people feel about that. But if it's that AB really thinks he was the wronged party in Oakland, that he just could not deal with the structure of Oakland, then this will be short-lived in New England. But for New England, it's enormous reward and no risk because they don't need him, and they will cut him like that and not let it become an issue. That is what I'm excited to see once he officially becomes a member of the team later today.
All right, so he wasn't available to play last night against the Steelers. He will be available most likely for the Patriots next week against the Miami Dolphins. So a lot of eyes on that game there. We'll talk much more about this. But coming up, let's talk some Baker Mayfield and the Browns and their disappointing Week 1 loss. That's next on FS1. You can always check us out on the Fox Sports channel on Sirius XM. We're back right after this.
Week 1 is in the books, but DraftKings isn't finished celebrating with some huge fantasy football contest. For Week 2 of the football season, DraftKings, the leader in one-day fantasy football, is giving new users a free shot at over $1.5 million in prizes with your first deposit when you put in code FTF during sign-up. Draft your lineup and feel the sweat like never before. Every run, throw, and catch means more with a DraftKings lineup on the line. It's simple. Just draft your lineup, stay under the salary cap, and see how your team stacks up against the competition. Plus, all new and existing users can get a deposit bonus of up to $500. That's some extra cash to play with this football season. Nothing adds to the sweat of watching the game quite like having a shot at over $1.5 million in prizes. Download the DraftKings app now and use code FTF. For a limited time, both new and existing users can get a deposit bonus of up to $500. New users, don't forget to enter our code FTF to get a free shot at over $1.5 million in prizes with your first deposit. That's code FTF. Only at DraftKings. Minimum $5 deposit required. Deposit bonus requires a 25 times playthrough. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details.
Welcome back. We'll get to Baker's tough day in a second, but first, Washington, Philly, and Vernon Davis with a spectacular play here. Catches, hurdles, runs through, tackles some more. Oh, and gets into the end zone.
At this point, it looked like we might be in the midst of an enormous Week 1 upset. Washington jumping out 17 points. Vernon Davis playing with a heavy heart due to the passing of a family member. That was, just the hurdle was great. Then he finished off with the touchdown, see?
Always been one of the best athletes. And, man, he was out there definitely playing with a heavy heart. Tremendous play, though.
All right, Colts Chargers, Phillip Rivers thinks he's got an easy touchdown, but Malik Hooker flies in at the last minute for the nice pick.
Who you calling a hooker? Let me see that, Malik. Straight from Ohio. Another Buckeye right there.
Health has been his only bugaboo.
Yes.
Ability. But this play, I was watching this game in real time. Colts little plus 6.5. Appreciate that. Yeah. I thought he was going to break it up. To make that catch was unreal.
All right, Ravens, Dolphins. Preston Williams.
Dolphins didn't score no touchdowns in this game.
Catching it in the back of the end zone, tapping both feet inbounds.
Man. We got to be the only show in America.
I'm boycotting this one.
That's getting a Dolphins highlight.
Even in Miami, they're skipping over it.
Oh, yeah. Stephen Ross has got a really good football team.
I think that was the 7th touchdown of the day. The problem was the first 6 were scored by Baltimore.
That's funny. On to Baker Mayfield and the Browns. All right, on paper, one of the more talented teams in the league, the preseason darlings, the favorites to win their division for the first time since 1989. All right, that's on paper. On the field, it's quite a different story. Baker struggled, throwing 3 picks all in the fourth quarter and getting sacked 5 times, getting destroyed by Tennessee 43-13 yesterday, a 30-point drubbing to open the season.
Everybody's going to throw us in the trash. I think that's good. I know what type of men we have in this locker room, and quite frankly, I don't really give a damn what happens on the outside. I know how we're going to react. I know what we're going to do, how we're going to bounce back, and we got a Monday night game coming up. So we don't really care. We're ready to go.
People are going to say some of this was because you guys didn't
I don't care about what nobody says, so don't even ask me that question.
Good lack of playing time in the preseason have something to do with it?
Man, don't ask me no question like that.
Okay.
Are we done?
So A very bitter locker room after a very big loss by the Cleveland Browns. See, what'd you make of this team yesterday?
Well, they didn't play well. They didn't play well. And one of the things in trying to put a team together, and especially when team has a young players that aren't used to winning in the pros, and most of the veterans that they brought there aren't used to winning. So you have a young culture that brings in other players that aren't used to winning. And this wasn't even a primetime game, but Tennessee is underrated as a franchise. Vrabel had those boys ready to play fundamentally, and they're very, very physical. One of the question marks just from a team going forward with the Browns was how good would their offensive line be? Last year, they were a pleasant surprise when Freddie Kitchens took over. Their ability to be able to run the ball, have balance on offense, that's what they were able to do. But they're not immature as a football team. You could see with the penalties, not that many penalties since the Raiders in 2016, 18 penalties, 180 yards. It's impossible to win a football game. So if
when you have that many penalties, who do you pin that on? The coach not getting the team ready, or is that just them not being ready?
No, that's just an excuse. Anyone who blames the coach because, say their left tackle, Cam Robinson, he kicks a guy.
Yeah.
It's not the coach's fault. In the heat of battle, a guy kicks another guy. No, that's not the coach's fault. That's him. He doesn't have any type of discipline. I'm sure that they'll have a bunch of these clips together, and as a team, they'll learn from it. But no, we shouldn't blame Freddie Kitchens. But it shows that when you bring together a bunch of kids who have not won in the NFL and guys from other teams, Olivia Vernon, he hadn't won with the Giants. OBJ hadn't won where he's been. Sheldon Richardson, he hadn't won on a big, big level where he's been. So now you have these in with all the guys who've been there that have been losers. So we talked about them when they have a bad month, how would they respond? Well, here we go. The first month is off, and they're not doing well, as you can see in the interviews, and they definitely didn't do well in the most important thing, the football game yesterday.
How do you lose games in the NFL? Turn the ball over? That's usually the best way to lose games. Baker threw 3 fourth-quarter picks. How about third and fourth down efficiencies? Well, the Browns were miserable. They were 1 of 12 on third and fourth downs. You mentioned the penalties. Most in the NFL in 3 or 4 years, the most in Browns team history.
18.
I mean, 18 penalties for 180 yards is laughable. One other way to lose, get your quarterback hit a bunch. A way to do that is have your left tackle, who's not that good to begin with, get kicked out of the game. Greg Robinson for kicking somebody. He should have been kicked out of the game. That was obviously intentional. I know watching the game, there was some question, did he mean to? To my eye and to the ref's eye, he clearly meant to. And now, of those 4 things, the one that is most concerning to me is the last one, Baker getting hit. Because when we were doing the tale of the tape on paper about Cleveland, the least proven part of their team, the least talented part of their team was their offensive line. Maybe their best offensive lineman from last year, Kevin Zeitler. He now plays for the New York Giants. He was part of the Olivier Vernon trade. We knew Greg Robinson, who's their left tackle, the guy who got kicked out of the game, they waived him before the start of the year for salary cap reasons, knowing they could bring him back. If your left tackle's in a position where you could put him available to the whole league, right, and you're like, don't worry, we'll get you back, yeah, right, well, that shows you the position that you're in. With all that said, this is a 15-13 game with 17 minutes left. And then the wheels fell off. Right after the Browns had their first good drive since their first drive of the game, the very next play, Derrick Henry, 75-yard screen pass that fooled every single member of the Browns defense. After that, the Browns, on their next 4 possessions, turned it over on downs once, and Baker threw 3 interceptions, including a pick 6. So if you didn't watch this game, this wasn't a blowout from start to finish.
Right.
This is a 2-point game with 2 minutes left in the third quarter, and then the Browns hit some adversity, and they absolutely laid down. It doesn't change my opinion on them for the season, but this is a terrible way for their season to start.
I know you've been really high on Tennessee's offense coming in, and I know you like them a lot, but what surprised you more about Cleveland, their offense or their defense?
Well, I was surprised defensively that they didn't get to the quarterback more. I thought they would be able to put more pressure on the quarterback. As Nick said, I watched this whole game. It was a tight game going back and forth. You would expect Tennessee to be in a 21-20 game, 20-17 game. They made a couple big plays, and they had already outclassed Cleveland. They were more physical than them at the point of attack. They kept their head, their composure. But at the end, when Baker just tried to force the ball, which he tried to try to bring them back, that's how you get the 3 interceptions. So The 3 interceptions are a little misleading. Baker was not accurate like he typically is, but some of that came from the hits that he absorbed earlier in the game, and that's why he had to get an x-ray. I believe something was wrong with his right arm. He got sacked earlier in the game, and you could see his right arm kind of went numb, or he lost the feeling in that. I believe it because 2 of the interceptions was all accuracy. He had guys open, and the ball didn't go where he was aiming
and his
it to go.
hand, you could see it when he left the stadium, was in a
soft wrap.
cast.
And listen, they said their x-rays were negative, but I agree. Obviously, something happened there. But this is where the lack of a veteran who, to Chris's point, has done some winning, I think showed up in the fourth quarter, where it was an absolute stomach punch to that team that after they had fought back to get it to a 2-point game, 30 seconds later, 1 play later, Derrick Henry streaming down the sidelines for a 75-yard touchdown. You're down 2 scores again. But even then, you're down 9 with 16 and a half minutes left. The game is far from over, and the Browns unraveled from that point forward. Listen, the team that, if you're not picking the Browns, I think most people are picking the Steelers to win their division. They also lost by 30 points this weekend. Now, the Ravens looked unbelievable, and we'll talk more about them later. I wouldn't bury the Browns just yet, to say the least, but obviously, Week 1 went terribly in every way it could have. Baker got hit. They turned the ball over. They couldn't convert 3rd or 4th downs. And the penalties that'll probably be the most penalties any team commits in any game, all 256 games played in the league this year. Not a great debut for Freddie Kitchens and the new-look Browns.
Which is why sometimes it's good to see what a team looks like before we anoint them. Coming up, we discuss Dak Prescott's historic Week 1 performance. That's next on First Things First. Are you ready for what's ahead? You can't always predict the future, but you can game plan for it. Generations of families and businesses have harnessed the power of Pacific to help them reach their unique goals. Whether you need to save money to meet your needs, ensure your family is protected, or make sure you don't run out of money, Pacific Life has a variety of financial solutions that can help. Pacific Life counts more than half of the 100 largest U.S. companies as its clients and has been named one of the 2019 world's most ethical companies by the Ethisphere Institute. Protecting what matters most to people for 150 years and counting, that's the power of Pacific. Ask a financial professional about how Pacific Life can help you game plan for your future, or visit www.pacificlife.com. Check this out. This made me chuckle. Steelers backup center B.J. Finney got the snap count wrong, and the referee called a false start on all the linemen except for the center. Guys?
Yeah, the referee didn't do him any favors there, and he was holding back a smile when he said it. The entire offensive line moved except for the center. Pouncey had just gone out with an injury. This is the backup center's first snap of the game, and you saw him turn to Big Ben and go, like, I thought we were on 2. Everyone went on 1. Wasn't great. It was actually one of the Steelers' better plays of the day, oddly enough, because it was only negative 5 yards. It was a tough moment for B.J. Finney coming in for
your first professional play. No, that's not a bad look. It's amazing when you get nervous how you can't hear or you can't see.
Or count.
Coach like,
or move.
What?
and he was just standing there. He was like, nope, everyone's wrong with
I'm
me.
going to tell you what he was. He wasn't in a rush to play some football.
No.
We started.
Pouncey limped off, and this kid was like, oh, my God.
All right, time for stories to start your morning, sponsored by Gillette Clear Gel. Yesterday, the Patriots raised their 6th Super Bowl banner before destroying the Steelers, the aforementioned Steelers, by 30 points. Tom Brady improving to 6-0 in his career at home against Pittsburgh. Nick, how impressive were the Pats last night?
In all phases, they were extraordinary. They got some new punt returner I never heard of. He took Edelman's job. Every time he got the ball, he went for 12 yards. Their 5th wide receiver, Jacoby Myers, undrafted. He had 1 pass thrown to him. That was great. Stephon Gilmore was great again. But the story to me is Tom Brady at age 42 doing something only one person his age has ever done in the history of the league, and that's George Blanda, who was the NFL's all-time scoring leader at one point because he played quarterback and kicker, which tells you how long ago he played, because there's a time where your quarterback could also be your kicker. Brady's now passing those guys in the record books. The defending champs look unbelievable.
Yeah, there hadn't been an easier time to throw the ball, Nick. If you don't hit the quarterback, then what Tom Brady's playing. I'm with Tom. Why would I quit? Man, they keep giving me the answers to the test. Couple play action, big plays. Tom looked good, but New England looked like, well, the preseason's important. What about those dual practices that they went through? Oh, they're important. Oh, Belichick knows something about football. NFL, watch out. 4 years in a row. Pat's going to the Super Bowl in Miami. Wow. AFC, y'all might as well just mail it on in.
Wow.
I love it.
Overreaction week 1 Monday.
Yeah.
Just give them the conference already.
Get on board.
Okay.
Now. Get on board.
All right. Mark it down.
Moving on.
Mark it down.
Lamar Jackson had quite a Sunday. Lit up the Dolphins, posting a franchise record 5 touchdowns. Again, it was the Dolphins, but still a great win. After the game, Lamar joked that his performance was, quote, not bad for a running back. Nick, what'd you make of Lamar's season debut?
I mean, it was perfect. And by a perfect passer rating, his stat line was one that precisely had never been put up in the history of football. I know the Dolphins are terrible. I don't think they're going to be the worst team ever. And he played as well as you can play. 20 pass attempts, 320 yards, only 3 incompletions. By the way, Miami, I know you don't have a ton of talent right now. Did you not get the memo that Hollywood Brown is fast? Hollywood Brown just running past him to start the game. Lamar was great. His season couldn't have started out any better.
Yeah, I love what Baltimore's doing with him as far as they've added some speed. Hollywood Brown, another Florida guy they've added. And him and Lamar haven't had a lot of reps together. So to see them hook up a couple times in game action, it's only promising. But I like the fact we're going to start with the run, add some little play action. They got a couple good athletes at tight end. So it should be exciting for Baltimore. I'm glad to see him progressing as a thrower.
The only team in their division with a win yesterday.
All right, number 1 overall pick, Kyler Murray did not win his first game, but he didn't lose his first game either. His career debut ended in a 27-27 tie against the Detroit Lions. Kyler brought the Cardinals back from an 18-point deficit in the fourth quarter, threw for 2 touchdowns and 308 yards. See, what was your biggest takeaway from Kyler's pro debut?
It's really hard to come back from an awful start. And this offense, oh, man, they were bad. For the first 3 quarters of the game, I mean, they were awful. If you could throw in a towel, Mick would have thrown a towel and stopped the fight. But it takes some stuff on the inside for a young player to respond the way he did in the fourth quarter and the overtime. Really accurate. He does have a big-time arm, needs time in front of him to throw. I believe that defense he faced with Detroit is one of the worst defense in the NFL. Couldn't put any pressure, couldn't cover anyone late in the game.
See, you mention all the time, people coach with the Patriots, they leave the Patriots, and they just start doing everything the opposite of the Patriot way.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, you blow an 18-point fourth quarter lead to a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach. It's indefensible.
Yeah, if I was on the team, I would have took that pencil and stuck it in his neck.
Okay. But on it's not that sharp either. On Kyler's side of things, he started the game 9 of 29 for 70 yards. As poorly as you can start, to recover the way he did, and that usually ties are bittersweet. For the Cardinals yesterday, that tie feels like a win. That was a great game, great finish for them.
All right, the reigning NFL MVP, Patrick Mahomes, picked up where he left off last season, carved up the Jaguars for 378 yards, 3 touchdowns, 40 points. However, his star wideout, Tyreek Hill, suffered a collarbone injury and is expected to miss a couple of weeks. Nick, what'd you take away from the Chiefs' Week 1 performance?
Much like the 99 Rams to the 2000 Rams, the number 1 offense in football, one year is going to be the number 1 offense in football the next year. I mean, Tyreek Hill, the most potent weapon the Chiefs have, went out after not doing much, and they did not miss a beat. Hey, Sammy Watkins, you know who that is? That's Clemson Sammy Watkins, 9 for $198 and 3 touchdowns. And they did this in a stadium that was the hardest place to score in all of football last year. Jacksonville at home allowed less than 16 points per game. The Chiefs scored on their first 8 consecutive possessions. Patrick Mahomes got dinged up in the game because Jacksonville...
Sprained his ankle.
Or his foot, his ankle. Jacksonville is going to create a pass rush. Didn't matter. Now, the Chiefs' defense, on the other hand, same as ever before again. Gardner Minshew came out there. Gardner Minshew, he went from junior college to Eastern Carolina, some school in Washington State, and just 22 of 25, dicing people up. So the defense going to be a problem, but the offense was as good as it was last year, even with Tyreek missing for 2.5 or 3 of the quarters of the game.
That defense, I got to start with the defense, because the defense, it's going to be bad again. And Patty Mahomes, I'm glad to see that He came out of the game healthy. They got after him. Jacksonville does have a good rush. But Sammy Watkins, I'm very happy for him. New England's getting a star receiver. I called Nick yesterday and said Kansas City got a star receiver in Sammy Watkins. This is as healthy and as good as I've seen him play a game since he left. He had a couple flash games there in Buffalo earlier in his career, but he hadn't been able to be healthy. And this offseason, he changed his whole training regimen. And Andy Reid said it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. He works hard, doesn't say anything, is low maintenance, and to be able to get him back up to the talent level they thought that when they went out and signed him to that big contract, that was, to me, was the most exciting thing to see, because to me, Sammy Watkins' career was going to be, well, what if? Well, man, if he could have ever stayed healthy. But he's phenomenal. He's big, got really strong hands, runs great routes, and he is fast. And you could see that. Andy Reid did a great job designing plays. They're going to be unstoppable offensively. Travis Kelce, Shady McCoy added to that.
8 yards to carry for Shady.
Shady is nice, especially with Andy. Andy knows exactly how to be able to use them. So the firepower will be there on their offense, but their defense, I believe, gave up another 400-yard game. And with them scoring as much as they scored, they're going to give up a lot of yards. But to have a backup quarterback come in and start carving them up the way he carved them up.
Yeah, he started 10 of 10.
I can't avoid that. It'd be nice to sit around and talk about their offense all day, but that defense, no team has ever won a Super Bowl with a historic bad defense like Kansas City had.
You got 5 new starters on defense. You have a new defensive coordinator, so obviously the defense is going to be a work in progress. It has to get better than it was yesterday. But if you go to Jacksonville and score 40, Jacksonville, even in a down year, was top 5 defense last year, and again, number 1 home defense as far as points allowed. The Chiefs look like a team that can set the all-time scoring record. Last year, they were the 3rd highest scoring team in football. Yesterday, against an excellent defense without their best offensive player other than the quarterback.
That offensive line's got to play better than that.
Well, absolutely, but they're also not going to play pass rushes as potent as Jacksonville each and every week. Mahomes
he was getting
hit a lot.
hit every single play, and now we don't even know going into week number 2 is Patty Mahomes, because they're not going to break the scoring record if he can't scramble.
If he's not and yesterday he was great from in the pocket, but you're absolutely right. Like, so many of his great plays are broken plays, scrambling around. Now, luckily, next week they have Oakland, but they're not going to have Tyreek Hill until middle of October. Well, I think longer than that. I think middle of October at the earliest. So they're going to have to make do without him. But this seems a lot like last year's Chiefs team. A great offense and a defense that's holding on for dear life.
And we should mention a tough afternoon for Nick Foles. He didn't even make it out of the first quarter. He's
Chris
done
Jones
most likely
on him
for the season, which is why Gardner Minshew was in. Okay, moving on to the Cowboys now, hosting the New York Giants. After a tumultuous preseason of will Zeke or won't Zeke play, Zeke played, but it was Zeke's quarterback, Dak Prescott, who was the star last night. Dak tossing 4 touchdowns, throwing for over 400 yards. He also finished with a perfect passer rating. Also still waiting for a contract, but Jerry Jones says that's imminent at this point. Here's Dak after the game.
Surrounded by talent. This offense is full of it. You said it. It's fun. It's fun to be a part of it. It's fun to be the quarterback of this group. To be able to go out there and lead these guys, the offensive line, the way they played, the receivers making plays, the backs, obviously. It's just great to be a part of this group.
All right, Steve, I'll start with you. What were your impressions of the Cowboys, of Dak Prescott leading this Cowboys team to a good win?
My conversation would have to be around Dak and his ability to throw the ball. It's hard in this league to develop as a quarterback now, because if we don't see instant results from you in some form or fashion, and or if you win games but you don't throw the ball, like, we criticize the quarterback so much. And Dak being on the Dallas Cowboys, he is under the spotlight since he's took over for Tony Romo. And I had said that he would grow as a passer. It takes time. Your arm gets stronger. The more you can anticipate, the more you start becoming accurate, the more you can hit guys in stride. And that's what we saw. We saw a young quarterback who's got a lot of experience, and now the passing game part of his development is really starting to take shape. But they added some other players. Michael Gallup in his 2nd year. Yeah, he's going to have a breakout year. They've added more speed. Randall Cobb, he's much better slot receiver than what they've had and is a more accomplished wide receiver. Amari Cooper is going to only continue to get better. Jarvin is going to give them a threat as far as a tight end that can run down the field. So Dak Prescott, and the threat of them having to run the ball with Zeke into the line of scrimmage, they play action, and his ability now to be able to sit back, 3 receivers, 4 receivers, and just drop back and throw the ball, that was the most impressive thing that I saw yesterday in the NFL, his overall development as a passer. I knew he was a great leader. I knew he was the voice in this locker room. I knew that the Dallas Cowboys, his teammates love him. But ultimately, your game's got to be able to speak for itself. And that's what you could see in yesterday's game against the Giants. His ability to throw the ball down the field. I'm talking about piercing the ball through the defense, hitting guys in stride so that they can get yards after the catch. It was one of the better things that I've seen all weekend in the NFL.
Week 1's so tough because what are we seeing and why are we seeing it? The Giants last year struggled mightily on defense. They lose Olivier Vernon, Landon Collins, trade Snacks Harrison mid-year. So at the end of the year, are we going to look back and say the Giants, one of the worst defenses in football? Kellen Moore, new offensive coordinator. That looked very different than what they were running a lot of last year. Are we going to come back at the end of the year and say, man, Kellen Moore is the next guy that's going to be talked about as a head coach, young offensive mind? Or at the end of the year, are we going to come back and say, man, Dak Prescott took an enormous leap in year 4? Or the final option is that week 1 was an aberration. Here, I was skeptical of the Cowboys' ability to make the playoffs in a stacked NFC because of my skepticism about Dak Prescott. If Dak is anything close to the player he was yesterday, then of course they can make the playoffs. They can make the Super Bowl. Like, they didn't need Zeke or Tony Pollard yesterday. They needed the threat of them to a degree for play action. But, guys, Dak was delivering strikes. Guys were running open. I mean, to me, that's the best football game Dak has played since the playoff game against Green Bay. And I know they lost that game, but when he went toe-to-toe in a second-half comeback with Aaron Rodgers, his rookie season, when I thought he was going to be a star in this league.
Right.
Now, what he did yesterday, though, it's only been done 4 times in NFL history. That many passing yards, that many touchdowns, and a perfect passer rating. He was there's no holes to poke at that game yesterday. He distributed the ball great. Amari had a bunch of catches. Michael Gallup had a bunch of catches. Jason Witten got in the action with a very short touchdown. Everything, Dak checked every box to start a season yesterday.
Well, he certainly did enough to earn the contract that is probably coming his way any day now, according to Jerry Jones. But we talked so much about how the Cowboys were going to use Zeke in his first game. What did you think of, I think, 38 snaps he had, but what did you think of the way the Cowboys used him?
He got the right amount of touches. He was able to get some game conditioning. You could see early in the game, he tried to bounce outside, and you can see he didn't have his game day legs, or he couldn't break as many tackles. But you could see as the game went on, he got stronger. I don't believe they did damage to him long term. It was nice how they fit him in to the new system. Sometimes had Zeke start out in the slot. And that's what you call just window dressing, just so you can see where the defense is. They started him in the slot, and then they brought him into the backfield. So the workload, it was very good. But they relied on Dak's ability to be able to throw the ball. And, Nick, from what I saw, a lot of the things are duplicatable. Number one thing, they had a play-action pass where he faked into the line of scrimmage, looked the safety off to his left, and threw a BB down the middle. All right? His accuracy, if he can keep his accuracy up, I don't see why he can't duplicate some of the things. He was flighting the ball. He's got another 7 games in Texas State, in Jerry World, where there's perfect conditions. Like, I don't know why he wouldn't be able to duplicate the performance on a regular basis, because that's what younger players, when that light turns on and they get that game success, because he's had a lot of team success. He's had a lot of experience. The only thing that he hadn't had was, well, what if they take us out of our running game and I just drop back and throw the ball? So it's not a matter of who the defenders were. If you give him free lanes, if you bump and run one of his wide receivers on the outside, he'll look the safety off and he'll find Amari Cooper with a nice fade pattern. All those things, to me, are promising signs, and they're duplicatable.
And it is Overreaction Monday. I get that. But you said something before the show that I thought about, and I think it's interesting. This group of wide receivers that we saw take the field yesterday for them in Cooper, Cobb, Gallup, that's the best group of wide receivers, core of wide receivers the Cowboys have had since, what, Tom, a decade? 2 decades as far as
long time.
Their ability. Gallup can be your speed threat. Cooper, your do-everything guy that also has speed. And we know that Randall Cobb, even if Green Bay wanted to move on, he is an upgrade over Cole Beasley, with respect to Cole Beasley. So all of
Man,
us,
you don't have to get no respect to Cole Beasley, man. I hate when people say that.
with
all respect. Well, what respect does he earn?
I don't know. He played a decent game in Buffalo yesterday.
Get
I think
out of
about
here,
5 catches, 40 yards. Not the point. Point is, Dak is in the best position he's been in. He's got all 3 of his offensive linemen.
Yep.
The drama with Zeke is now over. He seems to have a more than competent receiving core. If Cris is right that he can duplicate not these numbers, but this type of performance, then the Cowboys absolutely can compete with the Eagles for that division and be a dangerous playoff team. I need to see it a little more than just week 1 against the Giants.
Amari Cooper looked really good yesterday. You think John Gruden would like to have that wide receiver back?
No, he did.
Coming up, what went so wrong for the Steelers last night? That's next on First Things First.
I'm ready to talk about Gruden. I'm ready to fire on him.
Back here, First Things First, with Super Bowl champion Cris Canty. Hey, Cris.
Good morning, Jenna.
What up? How you doing?
I'm good. You're looking awfully colorful this morning.
I'm feeling
nice dress,
awfully
isn't it?
Nice
colorful
dress. I heard the
this
guys
morning,
compliment
Cris
you at the
Canty.
top of the show.
Yeah, it makes me feel good when they do that.
See, a little swag
serious.
coming off of the first full weekend of football.
Happy and things, or you want me to start?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
He was just
I'm trying, Cece.
No problem. People go to the refrigerator when y'all do that.
No, come back. Let's talk some Sunday Night Football, Canty. Last night, the Patriots showed up to play while the Steelers just sort of showed up. Pittsburgh scored only 3 points. Big Ben completed just 27 of 47 passes, no touchdowns, and a pick. His once biggest target, Antonio Brown, now plays for the team who beat him last night. So what do you make of the Steelers' season debut? Here's head coach Mike Tomlin.
No need to sugarcoat it, man. We weren't ready for prime time tonight. All of us, not a good enough plan, not a good enough execution of that plan. You got to tip your cap to those guys. It's humbling, it sucks, but that's the National Football League. It won't define us if we don't let it, and that's what we talked about in there. We own it. We chew it. It sucks. We can't have that and be varsity. We can't have that and be competitive, but we had it tonight, and so that's why I said what I said. We were not ready for prime time.
Cris Canty, how do you excuse that? How do you excuse an organization like the Steelers not being ready for the New England Patriots, not being ready for the first game of the season?
Well, there is no excuse, but I think we do have an explanation for what happened yesterday. I mean, you talk about what the Pittsburgh Steelers wanted to do this offseason. They wanted to eliminate all of the distractions, all of the noise. You know, when you had the AB situation, Le'Veon Bell, Ben Roethlisberger making headlines with his radio interview during the 2018 football season. And so I thought they were trying to put to bed all of those distractions. But the reality is that it wasn't addition by subtraction when you talk about losing arguably the best wide receiver in the National Football League and arguably the best running back in the National Football League in Le'Veon Bell. Like, I understand that Bell didn't play for them last year, but you had Antonio Brown out there, and he does make a difference. He is a player that can dictate front and coverage and make the picture cleaner for Ben Roethlisberger. And you saw yesterday against that New England secondary, which is one of the best, if not the best in the National Football League, those receivers couldn't get any separation. Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, I mean, you run down the list, Dante Moncrief, they couldn't separate from the defenders in the back seven of the New England Patriots defense. And the reality was it made it a lot harder for that Steelers offense to be able to put points on the board. You look at their first 5 possessions in the game, the first half, I mean, you had a situation where you went 3 and out 3 consecutive times. We call that a kill. Nick, I know you're a numbers guy. Analytics, the probability scale says that 3 consecutive 3 and outs is the equivalent of what a turnover would be in a game in terms of being able to help you win. But, I mean, and then you ended up with a turnover on downs. So it shows you how incredibly inefficient that offense was. And then, of course, Ben Roethlisberger not being able to push the ball down the field, only completing 2 of 12 attempts of 10 yards or more downfield in the first 3 quarters of football. When you can't push the ball down the field like that, it makes it hard to keep up with the New England Patriots offense. So all in all, it was a situation where the Steelers went out there and they couldn't have played worse.
And when you're one-dimensional, they ran for 1 first down. And by the way, James Conner, after his really great first half of last season's start to his career, has fallen back to the pack a little bit. You saw last night why, despite the fact that Antonio Brown is damn near certifiably crazy, the The owner went to visit him to try to fix the relationship last year.
Because they need him.
Because maybe it is. Sometimes it's addition by subtraction. Sometimes it's subtraction by subtraction.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're a 13-win team. The last year you had Le'Veon and AB. And then Le'Veon doesn't play a year and you miss the playoffs. And now you're not going to have Le'Veon or AB, and we'll see if you go from being alive for the playoffs in Week 17 as you were last year to a team that is fighting to be 500, because that's what the team looked like last year. The defense, which thought its rookie linebacker was going to all of a sudden fix things in Week 1, obviously did not. They were starting one of the 8 players that made the league from the AFL, the AAFL. He started for them in the secondary yesterday due to injuries in their secondary. And
Didn't take long for New England to find him.
No.
And his bad resume.
Of course. They knew that was out there, and they scouted it. And New England, after the first half dozen plays of the game, made it look like, oh, we're going to run, we're going to run, we're going to run. No, we're just going to dice you up. But the biggest absence was clearly Antonio Brown. All of a sudden, Dante Moncrief is heavily involved. All of a sudden, Juju is getting those coverages AB used to get and not the beneficial coverages he got last year. They're not going to look like that every week, obviously. But their limitations on offense, given their lack of talent on offense, is the biggest reason that I'm so skeptical of their being better this year than last year, despite the fewer distractions, because the talent is going to matter. And yesterday they beat a team, or they lost to a team, by the way, that they've never beaten in that building. They're 0-6 now in Gillette since that stadium's existed when Tom Brady plays. But it shouldn't be surprising that the offense had struggled moving the football against what I think is going to be a top 5 defense with their best 2 weapons in the last 5 years gone.
Yeah, this is not about L. Bell. This is not about AB. New England Patriots have manhandled the Pittsburgh Steelers for years. This is not new. They've embarrassed Pittsburgh for a number of years. Even when Pittsburgh, when we thought that they were a perfect matchup, New England is always the class in that game. This is a game of matchups. You would think their secondary in New England, which I believe is the best in the league, going against the young wide receiving core. To me, I've never seen a good wide receiving core be led by a 22-year-old. Now, Juju Smith-Schuster, that's what his responsibility is. At 22 years old, he's got to lead that wide receiving core. And I do believe that he can fill the void of a number 1 guy. But let me tell you something. They don't have a number 2. James Washington is not a number 2. If Moncrief is your number 2, you got a problem. I've seen enough football with him in Indianapolis and last year in Jacksonville when they were desperate for a wide receiver. So to think that, AB's gone. No, it's not about AB just by himself. It's about that 2, 3, and 4 spot. And you can see last night, New England forced Ben into your only matchups are going to be low percentage throws deep down the field. And they weren't able to connect on a bunch of those. The offensive line of Pittsburgh didn't show up. They are a dominant, underrated offensive line. That's why they couldn't run the ball. We should mention them. And I thought one of the great things that you said, it wasn't obvious to me because I had never heard it. Nick said it was obvious. I had never heard it in all my years of football. When you go 3 and out 3 times, it's just like a turnover. I had never heard that. So that was something that I'll always be watching for. This was a dominant performance. New England, Tom Brady, if you don't get to him, you're not going to have a chance. This Pittsburgh defense and Devin Bush in the middle, he is the answer to the injury and the gaping hole. But they isolated him, put him in man-to-man coverage, and they took advantage of his youth.
We talk a lot about a team's identity. You love when we talked about the identity of the Eagles and who they are now. The Steelers had an identity when they had the 3 Bs there. We knew what you were going to get from them. You knew where their strengths were. They looked like last night a little lost, like they didn't really know which direction they were going in, like they didn't have an identity. Did you feel the same way?
No, I felt the same exact way because they couldn't get anything going on offense, particularly in the first half. And when you're struggling like that as a team, you're looking for the guys that are force multipliers, guys that can elevate the play of everybody around them. And, of course, in the middle of that has to be Ben Roethlisberger. He's supposed to be the guy that's able to put the team on his back and be able to make the plays to get the team back in the game. He just wasn't able to do that. And, of course, on the defensive side of the ball, the Steelers didn't have any answers for what the Pats were trying to do to them. A lot of the times when the Steelers match up against the Patriots, you see a lot of zone coverage in the back end of their defense. Last night they tried to unveil some man coverage.
Oh, yeah, we're going to come in, we're going to trick them up.
And Tom Brady diced them apart with dragons and crosser routes and all of that type of stuff. And you saw it on that Josh Gordon touchdown where he caught the ball shallow over the middle, took it to the house. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers just didn't have any answers in terms of being able to slow down that Patriots offense. But if you listen to the Patriots players in the postgame, you can understand why the game was so one-sided. When you hear Deron Harmon talk about the expectations for this team coming into this year and knowing what they're trying to accomplish, knowing that no team has gone back-to-back since the Pats did it 03-04, that's what this team has on their mind. And they understand that you have to prepare each and every week, and you can't take any opponent for granted. So, CC, I hear you when you say it's not about an AB or Le'Veon Bell in this particular game. The outcome didn't surprise me. What the game looked like did surprise me. It's been a long time since I've seen the Pittsburgh Steelers get manhandled like that.
Well, it's been a very long time since the Steelers didn't get into the end zone. This is the first game Ben Roethlisberger's gone without a touchdown pass since October of 2017. Yes, the Patriots did some of that, but his own lack of personnel did some of that as well. And it's not the story today, but I think that whether or not the Pittsburgh Steelers have a legitimate running game with James Conner is going to be a big part of this season, because Ben's not going to be able to throw for 5,000 yards like he was last year. That's not going to exist without Antonio Brown. And James Conner, since week 10 of last year, giving you 45 yards per game on the ground, probably not going to get it done for them.
All right, we got to take a break. Cris, stick around. Coming up, are the Browns going to be the most disappointing team in the league this season? Let's overreact to one game next on First Things First. Back here, First Things First with Chris Canty. We are going viral. Yesterday, Deshaun Jackson played his first game back with the Eagles and had a day. 8 catches, 154 yards, 2 touchdowns. And before the game, D-Jax wore cleats in honor of his longtime friend, the late Nipsey Hussle. The two grew up together in Los Angeles. Jackson says he'll auction a pair of these each week this season, with proceeds going to Nipsey Hussle's kids.
That's awesome. And Deshaun, obviously, I mean, he got the Eagles back in the game, but this is the most important thing he did yesterday. That's really cool, and I can't believe it's been since March since Nipsey was killed. We saw it across sports. Russell Westbrook had the 2020 game. A lot of guys that knew him from South L.A. That's an awesome thing Deshaun Jackson did.
And D-Jack has always done things right there in South Central L.A. He's always been connected. Him and his mom, they've always given back. So good start. Coming back to Philadelphia. And, man, we have been bragging about, oh, man, he's the best in the league at 60 yards. He was like, I'm also nice from 50.
Yeah. Right. And a nice win for the Eagles to boot. All right, on to the Cleveland Browns now. Cleveland did not exactly make good on all the hype this preseason, losing by 30 points to the Titans. Baker Mayfield looked shaky, throwing 3 picks, getting hit 7 times, sacked 5 times. Odell Beckham was relatively quiet by his Pro Bowl standards as well. Here's Baker Mayfield after the game.
Everybody's going to throw us in the trash. I think that's good. I know what type of men we have in this locker room, and quite frankly, I don't really give a damn what happens on the outside. I know how we're going to react. I know what we're going to do, how we're going to bounce back, and we got a Monday night game coming up. So we don't really care. We're ready to go.
People are going to say some of this was because you guys
didn't care about what nobody says. So don't even ask me that question.
Could lack of playing time in the preseason have something to do with it?
Man, don't ask me no question like that.
Okay.
Are we done?
Yeah.
Chris Canty, there's a lot of talent in this team. We talked about how they would handle themselves if they go on a string of losses. Obviously, after this first loss, they weren't great in the locker room, but it is coming off your first game and your first loss. What did you make of the Browns yesterday?
It was bad, and this is one of the things that we were worried about, this Browns team, because you have so many young guys a part of that core that are outspoken. Like, when you hit that adversity, what is this team going to do? Freddie Kitchens talked about it in the post game yesterday. You know, either you're going to come together as a team or you're going to run away from each other. We got a bunch of guys that are going to come together. Well, we're going to find out. Because, I mean, this team is not, did not play up to the expectations that we set for them this offseason. When you lose the turnover battle 3-0, you have 18 penalties, and the other team scores without a touchdown without their offense being on the field. That's about as bad as it gets. I don't know what the odds are, but I'm pretty sure that you're not going to win a football game. And so when you start your season at your home opener with all the expectations that we have for the Browns coming into the season in that fashion, I don't know how you couldn't be disappointed. But then listening to Baker Mayfield at the podium after the game, CC, that probably bothered me just as much as the performance that he had in the game. And I'll tell you why. When you stand up there after a game like that and you don't accept responsibility for what happened, and you talk about what people are going to talk about, the naysayers, all of that stuff, when you focus on that rather than focusing on trying to improve your team's execution, when you make that the story, to me, that's the problem. You got to recognize when you're a quarterback, you are responsible for setting the agenda for the locker room And yesterday, I think Baker Mayfield missed an opportunity after the game. Now, listen, Freddie Kitchens was right about one thing. It only counts as one game, and the season's not over. But your quarterback is responsible for setting the tone, and I thought Baker missed an opportunity to do that.
Well, they did everything you can do to lose a game. You mentioned that if you have 18 penalties and 3 turnovers and you allow a defensive score, probably no team's ever won a game like that. If you do any of those things, it's damn difficult to win a game. 18 penalties is the most in franchise history, 1 of 12 to boot on 3rd and 4th downs, meaning every drive was ending prematurely. And the offensive line, which was, when we were doing the tail of the tape on this team, pros and cons, the cons were questions about the coach because he was inexperienced, overall lack of experience on the team, but the one unit that we were worried about was the offensive line. And it doesn't help when one of your offensive linemen gets kicked out the game for kicking a guy clearly intentionally. With all that said, this is a 15-13 game with 2 minutes left in the 3rd quarter. And then the very first play after the Browns had finally clawed themselves back into it, Derrick Henry takes a screen pass, 75 yards for a touchdown right on this play right here, and then the wheels officially fell off. The next 4 drives ended without a kick for the Browns, but all with the ball being in the Titans' hands. 3 turnovers and 1 turnover on downs. Those turnovers all by Baker. That's a recipe to get blown out in a game you really weren't blown out in until the very end. It doesn't change my opinion. This should be the best team in the division, but they got punched in the mouth as badly as anybody in the league this weekend, this side of Miami, and we'll see how they respond next weekend against the Jets.
Now, Jenna, you are correct that one of the things we were going to be concerned about, what if they have a bad month? What if they have a bad stretch? Absent of what about the offensive line? Because they were surprised last year. Also, as a football team, you have to learn how to win, but also you have to learn how to lose. And that's what Canty's talking about as far as Baker at the press conference. You can't tell me in one breath you don't care what people say, but then you give people all the power to throw you into the trash. Like, where would you care? Why would you care where you're at with people anyway? What's important, Canty, is our pass protections. What are our good runs? What are our good throws and the mistakes that I made? Because there's nothing worse as a pro, Canty. You'll be able to vouch for this. When you go out there and you look like you ain't been practicing. Like you are totally embarrassed as a professional. You're like, man, all these people came, especially when you play at home. Man, they spent their hard-earned money, and we did not give them the type of performance to live up to the hype. So how they respond is going to be very, very critical. In that Monday night game, let's see how they come from the start. But for Freddie Kitchens, it's important that he gets this young team attention because you got a lot of kids on that team haven't won anything. And the guys who came from other NFL teams, they haven't won anything. So you want the winning streak to be able to stop at 1, but it starts with having a good practice on Wednesday and Thursday, making those corrections, and next time you put that product on the field, you want it to be a much improved version.
Were you more concerned with how their offense played or how their defense played? Because we hyped up both sides of the ball this offseason.
Well, yeah, I was concerned about both sides of the ball, particularly both lines, the offensive lines and the defensive lines. I didn't think they played particularly well on the defensive side of the ball. I thought that the Browns would be able to generate a little more pressure. Keep in mind that the Titans were missing 2 starters on that offensive line, one due for suspension and one due for injury. So I know that we were making the excuses for Baker Mayfield about not having Greg Robinson after he got ejected. But, I mean, Marcus Mariota was able to do without his starting left tackle. So, I mean, at some point you have to be able to, make up for the deficiencies or the lack of having personnel available to you. And I just didn't see Baker Mayfield do that. I mean, to have 3 interceptions in the 4th quarter, you can't do that as a quarterback and try to put your team in situations where you want to win. Denzel Ward, another guy that I thought underperformed yesterday. A.J. Brown had a day on him.
Yeah, gave up 2 big plays.
He gave up 2 big plays, and then, of course, he gave up the defensive holding penalties, both of which led to touchdown drives for the Tennessee Titans. So you can't do those type of things as a football team if you expect to have a chance to be able to win games, especially when you're talking about games that are late into the 3rd, 4th quarter.
Oh, and to be clear, I'm not excusing Baker's performance because his left tackle got kicked out at all, especially because Greg Robinson is not a demonstrably better player than the player who backs up Greg Robinson. Greg Robinson, there's a reason that he has not lived up to the high draft billing and he's bounced around the league a bit. But to answer your question, Jenna, I'm far more disappointed with the offense than the defense. The defense, at least, I mean, again, with 2 minutes left in the game, the defense had allowed 13 points. Now, the Titans had 15, but that's because 2 of them came on a safety that the offense gave up, and the offense could not move the football except for the first drive of the game and then that drive I mentioned in the third quarter. The offense had the lion's share of those penalties. The offense obviously had all the turnovers. The offense was the reason that this team, to me, got stuck in the mud. The defense, I think, will play better, and I don't think Baker's going to have this bad of a game again this season. But the offense, in my mind, was the most concerning part of it. I know you see 43 points allowed, but safety, pick six, short fields because of the turnovers, that's not all on the defense.
Yeah.
All right, someone say the Browns get a bit of a reprieve next week. They'll face the Jets Monday night, who they themselves are coming off
they lose to the Jets, it'll be time to panic.
Tough loss. Canty, we'll see you later in the show. Coming up, Antonio Brown is heading to New England, but do they even really need him? That's next, not First Things First.
No, they don't need him.
All right, we'll get to Antonio Brown in just a second, but first, Washington, Philly, Vernon Davis does a little bit of everything on this play. Catches, hurdles, runs, beats defenders, and scores a touchdown.
Great way to start kickoff 100 season for the NFL. This is one of the first big highlights. Vernon Davis makes a great individual play. Isn't that your buddy, the safety there, number 42, Nick?
What?
Used to play for your Chiefs?
No. Wait, yes. Sorry, I thought you were talking about someone else. Yes, that is him. That is
Lions,
yes.
Cardinals,
yes,
Kyler Murray has all day to throw before finding Larry Legend deep for the diving catch.
It took him a long time, but they finally hooked up. Larry Fitzgerald helps bring them back in overtime. Man, this was this definitely will not go on the archives of football, the first 3 quarters of that air raid offense.
Them rallying, though, to get even a tie was impressive. Not as impressive as this, though.
Phillip Rivers thinks he's got an easy touchdown, but Malik Hooker flies in at the last minute for the one-handed
Overreaction week 1 Monday. I declare that this will end the season as the best defensive play we see all year. I mean...
No, this was a spectacular play, but it won't be the best of the year. Great catch. One hand, he's got unbelievable hands. He's got to be able to stay healthy. Promising safety.
The only thing that's hurting
the Ohio State.
Right, has been his inability to stay on the field.
All right, just when you thought the Antonio Brown saga was as crazy comes, AB will now be catching balls from Tom Brady. Over the weekend, the Raiders finally released him, and in what seemed to be just minutes later, Patriots picked him up. He agreed happily to a 1-year, $15 million deal, including a $9 million signing bonus. He posted this on Instagram with the caption, "Man, the Patriot way." Here's Tom Brady on his new receiver.
I think, like anything else, whether it was Josh last year or Phillip when he got here a few years ago late, and then, this year Antonio, how much can you learn and process and get in here, and we're all going to work hard and try to get up to speed as fast as possible. But we haven't had a training camp together or that, so it's, you got to force a lot of information, and, we're all excited to have him, and all I could say is we're just going to work as hard as we possibly can to get up to speed as quickly as possible.
You'll forgive me if I need to see it to believe it after what has transpired the last couple of weeks with Antonio Brown. All right, CC, do you think AB and the Pats work out?
Yeah, it's going to work out. It's going to work out. It's going to be amazing how much common sense he's going to get in that flight from Oakland to when he arrives at Foxborough and goes inside their facility. He's going to make a bunch of phone calls. He knows some guys on the team. Philip Dorsett grew up in South Florida. AB's been one of his heroes. They've worked out together. He's got some other people he's familiar with on the team, but it's remarkable, and I've seen it. Year after year, when Belichick is there, the craziest guys, what happens to them? They go there and they straighten up. Corey Dillon, you wouldn't believe the stories coming out of the Cincinnati Bengals locker room about Corey Dillon. He was typically on the milk carton as one of the worst people in the NFL. Oh, he goes there. Albert Haynesworth, no, it didn't work out. No. Because it worked out like this. He didn't do what we told him to do. We got rid of him.
Well, that's the thing. Right?
Randy Moss. On day one, Randy ain't have no type of problems with Bill Belichick. He loves the football laboratory. He loves learning football. So I knew Randy would thrive there. But Ocho Cinco, people thought he'd thrive there, but the football X's and O's got in the way of him not being able to learn, not being able to play a variety of positions. But I'm just going to tell you, I learned this when I lived in Minnesota for a long time. I was going over some people's houses, and my wife at the time told me, you got to take your shoes off when you get there. I was like, I'm not taking my shoes off. I spent a lot of money for these shoes. My shoes are clean. Yep, when you get there, you know what happens? You get to the door, it's the moment of truth. Do you want to come in or don't you? Do you want to play football? Because it's not a matter of, I got my own life. No, you don't have no life. It is the Patriot way, 24/7, and if you don't, they will get rid of you. It's only money. It's only money. They ain't spend no draft pick for you, so they ain't got no tolerance for you. You got one strike, and he going to be out. And Belichick's going to let him know that, and AB is not going to have a problem. Watch how it works out.
Well, okay, so I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying it won't be a problem because if he is a problem, he'll just immediately be gone, or it won't be a problem because he won't have a problem?
No, AB's going to have common sense this year. He's going to be there for 1 year.
Okay, well...
Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
All right, if that's the case, then what Antonio Brown did over the last 10 to 15 days is premeditated for this exact result. Because he appeared to be someone...
No, I don't think it was premeditated. And the reason why is because there were a number of teams that had a great deal of interest in there. He was trying to make it work in Oakland until he realized they fined him. When they fined him, that became a different ball game because then his guarantees were in jeopardy. Now, what happened after that? Well, there was a lot of premeditation. But before that, no. He was trying to work everything out in Oakland and get that $30 million guaranteed.
Okay, but then what he did, them fining him the first time did not void his guarantees. It only set the table for those guarantees to be voided if he continued to act out. And he acted like someone, pardon me, who could not control himself. He acted like someone who would repeatedly work against his own best interests. He acted like someone who was irrational, who was impulsive, who was someone you could not rely on. A plane ride does not change that. So the only way, if he does make it the whole season in New England, then the whole thing, the last week in Oakland was a long con. It was all, I want to leave. His agent has a great relationship with New England, maybe through somehow, I know you're not supposed to, through the little butterflies he heard, hey man, just so you know, New England, who tried to trade a first-round pick for you when Pittsburgh was moving you, they'd still take you. And so he just kept upping the ante on getting released. He kept upping the ante on, I'll threaten to fight the coach, that won't work, or threaten to fight the GM, I will.
But even if that was true, Nick, anything that he was doing don't make sense him going to New England. Maybe somewhere else.
What do you mean?
Like, because he doesn't have the type of personality that would suit going to New England.
Unless he knew that New England was going to be waiting for him. Chris, I don't know how we can...
This is what I do know, Nick. We make phone calls around the league. In New England, there were a bunch of teams waiting for him.
Yes, and somehow this thing got done in 2 hours. Bunch of teams waiting for him. Bunch of teams that can offer him contracts. And
it don't take long to negotiate a contract.
But if you got
we'll give you $10 million guarantee. Will that move you to the front of the line?
Of course.
You got a Hall of Fame quarterback. Well, that'll keep you in the front of the line.
Right. Agreed, Chris. The point that I am making is very simple. What we have seen Antonio Brown do is irrational, erratic behavior that has hurt him financially, hurt him publicly, hurt him in every way possible. Unless it was all in pursuit of this. If it wasn't, if this is just a happy coincidence, then why will he change? Then why will he all of a sudden?
Well, this is what. Well, I just know Belichick's influence. Belichick's influence makes people change. There's a guy out there named Steve Harvey. He writes this book, How to Get a Man, and said every woman. There's a man out there that would do everything right for that one woman, and Belichick is the coach. I would have loved to have played for him. I don't know how it would have gone, but I would have loved to think that I could have done it. And there are players in the league that, you know something? They'll straighten up for him because they respect him, and that happens as soon as they get the phone call or as soon as the transaction, or as soon as they talk to their friends and realize, hey, man, this is a different story here.
But 2 seconds after he agrees to go to the Patriots, he puts out an Instagram post, the Patriot way, with the money. Just in that post alone leads me to believe I don't think he really is committed to change, or we're going to see a different Antonio Brown.
Okay, do you think he's on the roster at the end of the season?
I do.
You got a chance to say something.
I know, but I just don't.
You do or don't?
I mean, I somehow want to believe that he's going to actually make it work because he found a place.
Nick, at the end of the season, is he on the team?
No.
Nick doesn't think so.
I do not think so.
I think he is because I've seen the influence of Bill Belichick.
I think what the Patriots have going for them, and by the way, why, because I didn't answer the question, why I think this is a smart move for them is because they are maybe the only team in the league that if he starts to act like Antonio Brown, they will not let it metastasize. They will instantly cut ties. It will only be $9 million. They've got the cap space anyway because they don't have a single bad contract on the roster. It is no risk, and the reward is, of all the receivers in the league, maybe the one whose skill set fits the Patriots the best because he can play every position. He can play. Julio, maybe you'd say would be better. Fine. Okay, then second best. Whatever it is, the reward is the best receiver Brady has had since Randy Moss. The risk
New
is
England's been trying to get a good receiver for the last 3 years.
they were so desperate they spent a first-round pick on a wide receiver for the first time in 25 years. They keep holding on to Josh Gordon, so I get why they did it.
Of course.
I support the fact that they did it because there is no risk. And the idea of why didn't another team do it? Other teams don't have, I think, the stomach to the first time he acts out, cut him.
Well, you saw the Raiders couldn't.
Of course, like to use Chris's analogy, the Raiders also had a no shoes policy, and Antonio said, "I'm not taking them off." And they're like, "Okay, well, walk slightly."
Dinner would be served
please.
at 7.
Right, walk lightly. And then he stomped around in the mud, and he's like, "I'm coming back in." And they're like, "All right, just don't tell mom."
Right.
Like, and so but the Patriots won't do that. And I just don't think a guy who's scrolling bank balances during meetings
Bad
and
kids
gets
can
upset.
see through it. Bad kids want discipline. All right, and they react to it when they do get it. Watch what's going to happen.
Okay. I don't think he makes it the year.
We'll see. Coming up, the other side of the Patriots game. What went wrong for the Steelers last night? That's next on First Things First. Time now for stories to start your morning, sponsored by Gillette Clear Gel. Lamar Jackson lit up the Dolphins.
Oh, different story.
Tossing 5 touchdowns, posting a perfect passer rating. After the game, he joked that his performance was, quote, not bad for a running back. See, what'd you make of Lamar's season debut?
I was really excited for him. He's from South Florida, going back there, him and Hollywood Brown, connecting without no offseason because Hollywood Brown had that Liz Frank on his foot there at Oklahoma in the championship, in the playoffs there. So, man, I was happy, and I'm happy the way Baltimore is grooming him to be a quarterback. They had us coming out thinking, hey, man, he's still going to run a little bit. No. But, man, against the JV, which happens to be the Miami Dolphins for Dolphins fans, yes, you guys are going to be awful all year. He carved them up. Very, very happy for him. Now, I got to pump my brakes a little bit. How many throws do we have next week? He goes against Kyler. Mm-hmm. I'm broadcasting that game. I'm excited about that.
That'll be awesome. Listen, our friend Warren Sharp, one of the smarter people writing about football, was saying to anyone who'd listen, he was better as a passer his rookie year than people gave him credit for. He was extraordinary.
Yeah, the numbers did lie.
Yep.
Reigning NFL MVP Patty Mahomes picked up where he left off last season, carving up the Jaguars for 378 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 40 points. However, his star wideout Tyreek Hill suffered a collarbone injury and is expected to miss some time now. Nick, what did you take away from the Chiefs' Week 1 performance?
The 2019 Chiefs offense is going to be the best offense the NFL has seen since the 07 Patriots. And I know the 07 Patriots got outscored by, I think, was the 2013 Dolphins, but I think that this is the level of offense this Chiefs team is going to have. When you can lose Tyreek Hill and not miss a beat against the #1 scoring defense at home last year, Jacksonville, they are going to be hanging 35 every week, which is good because that defense let Gardner Minshew look like a Hall of Fame quarterback when no one had heard of him 2 hours before kickoff. So the defense is going to be bad. The offense is going to be the best in the league.
Ho-hum, everything's the same in Kansas City, except Sammy Watkins. And they're going to need him to be a #1 for several weeks. That, to me, was the most exciting thing. Andy Reid did a great job. A defense that made the offense look pretty mundane last year. He came up with some creative ideas, creative play calling earlier, and they are a mismatch nightmare. Kelsey, Sammy Watkins, the running back, Shady McCoy making a contribution. Going to be exciting for that offense in Kansas City in 19.
All right, on to some Sunday night football now. Last night, the Patriots showed up to play while the Steelers just sort of showed up. Pittsburgh scored only 3 points. Big Ben completing just 27 of 47 passes, no touchdowns, and a pick. And his once biggest target, Antonio Brown, now plays for the team who beat them last night. Here's Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin.
No need to sugarcoat it, man. We weren't ready for prime time tonight. All of us, not a good enough plan, not a good enough execution of that plan. You got to tip your cap to those guys. It's humbling. It sucks. But that's the National Football League. It won't define us if we don't let it. And that's what we talked about in there. We own it. We chew it. It sucks. We can't have that and be varsity. We can't have that and be competitive. But we had it tonight. And so that's why I said what I said. We were not ready for prime time.
See, how is that even possible? How are you not ready for your season opener?
It's hard week number one. This is the oddest week of any of the weeks. And I know the Pittsburgh Steelers, when they left Pittsburgh on Saturday, they left thinking they had a good offensive game plan. They left thinking they had a good defensive game plan. But once you get into the game, and with New England, we didn't know what they were going to do. Do we think they're going to pick up from the playoff New England? Or do we think because their wide receiving core with Edelman and Josh Gordon being healthy, they're going to stretch the field? They did a little combination of both. They were a little suspect at that offensive line, so they helped them out by trying to run the ball early. When they couldn't run the ball, they went to that play-action, quick passing game. They start running a lot of picks and got Pittsburgh out of their man-to-man, forced them in the zone, and then Tom Brady started carving them apart in that zone. So Pittsburgh, how talented are they? I don't believe they're one of the most talented rosters. I knew that they still had a talent problem compared to, our locker room's that much better. I'm going to tell you what you do. Give me a talented team with a bad locker room and compare it to a good locker room with less talent.
Well, and listen, you can't lie with your actions. Lie with your words all the damn time. They knew everything they knew about Antonio Brown, and the owner flew to see him to try to repair the relationship, to try to get him to come back. You know why? Because they need him. As crazy as he is, as erratic as he is, all of a sudden, every receiver on their team got worse without him. Juju did not. Now, Juju might be a better player this year than he was last year. He should be, since he's, 22 years old, came into the league at 20. Mm-hmm. He is actually better. But he won't be better this year on paper or on the field because all the coverage is skewing towards him. James Washington, who could have been a nice story, in year 2, a number 3 receiver. Now he's got to be a number 2 receiver. And Dante Moncrief, who probably should be a number 2 receiver in the XFL, is now all of a sudden a number 2 receiver in the NFL and didn't go well for him last night. And Ben Roethlisberger does not have right now, it looks like, a running game to lean on. James Conner, after he came out of the gates great last year, last half dozen games for him, since every game he's played basically since week 10 last year, he's giving you 45 yards per game on the ground. Last night, they had 1 rushing first down. That's no way to beat the Patriots. So, yes, the story to me was more about how great the Patriots were than how bad the Steelers were. But everyone's going to quote Baker Mayfield, everyone's going to throw the Browns in the trash today because they lost by 30. The Steelers lost by 30 in a different way and looked just as bad, albeit against a far tougher opponent. Steelers have real problems, and Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season there as the coach of the Steelers. Mm-hmm. You look at them after week 1 and you wonder and you're worried, does that streak end this year?
Are you worried, though, about the Steelers moving forward, or was this, okay, we weren't prepared, it was against the Patriots, now we move on and get back on the Steelers' track?
Yeah, number one, I do think they were prepared. Just because you don't perform well doesn't mean you're not prepared. They're well coached as a staff. Mike Tomlin does a good job. But yes, Jenna, it's a great question. I am concerned. And you know the reason why? Cincinnati's better offensively. We saw them in Seattle. Their new coach looks like he knows how to design some plays. We know Cleveland's going to be better, and Baltimore offensively is going to be better. So I'm concerned about the lack of rush. I'm concerned about the safeties in the middle of the field, their lack of being able to cover people. So, yes, going forward, I am concerned. I'm not concerned about their offensive line because their offensive line is one of the top 5 in the league. They'll get that running game going. James Conner's lack of productivity is not his own. Last season, he might have gotten a little bit tired, but that offensive line, the last half of the season, was not as good. And in last night's game, they were not as good. So I believe once they get that running game going, it will allow these young receivers to grow. And Juju, I do believe, is a number 1. But when you put someone on him like Stephon Gilmore and give him a little bit of help, he is not going to get you the same productivity that we've seen when they've put those type of people on AB.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, are the Cowboys the best team in the NFC East after the performance they had yesterday? We discuss next on First Things First. Back here at Cris, Canty, we're going viral. Last night, Tom Brady and the Patriots opened the season with a blowout win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Before the game, they raised their 6th Super Bowl banner, and check these out. The Pats had custom Air Force Ones made by Nike to celebrate the occasion.
I feel like you can get a pair of those, C. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Of course, Gronk was in the building with his old teammates. First, he posted this, flexing with the caption, 6 trophies, 6 abs, 1 dent. He'd been working on that one for a while. Very nice.
Okay, Gronk.
All right.
Right?
Wow. Doing it for the gram.
Yeah,
huh?
evidently.
Trying to
In
show off.
retirement, living his best life.
Former Patriots.
Can I get back to
here.
the shoes, though? I feel like you, with your Robert Kraft connections, you guys vacation together in Israel, all these things, feel like you could get a pair of those sneakers.
Yeah, I can't be bragging about being with Kraft everywhere now, man. I gotta save some of that
No,
stuff.
you can't.
I didn't win no Super Bowls either, so wearing the Super, I can wear Kraft's own personal from Nike, but I can't wear the Super Bowls, and I gotta limit my visibility
Okay,
with Mr.
all right,
Kraft
you're right.
for a minute.
At arm's length right now?
Yeah.
My apologies. I forgot about that. I'll tell you later, Jenna.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
On to the Cowboys after a
Cool.
tumultuous
I ain't seen him in a while.
Yeah.
preseason, waiting on Zeke. Dak Prescott was the star on Sunday. 4 touchdowns and over 400 yards. Good enough for a perfect passer rating. Canty, what were your impressions of Dak and the Cowboys after their blowout against the Giants? We talked so much about how, you know, if this Zeke's team and what we're going to expect from Dak Prescott and how much they need him if they are going to, you know, play deep into the playoffs. What'd you think?
No, I was impressed by what Dak Prescott did yesterday. I mean, it's clearly taken a step forward in his 4th season. You can tell the maturation that's going on, the development in his overall game. He was decisive with his decision making, recognizing the coverages and being able to get the football out of his hands. I was really impressed by that. I mean, he was the beneficiary of the Giants running a lot of split safety coverages, and then he was able to attack the deep middle of the field. They utilized play action with Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield, got Alec Ogletree and those Giants linebackers to bite up, and then you were able to make some completions down the field, in the middle of the field. Michael Gallup, Blake Jarwin with the touchdown. So, I mean, a lot of the things that you saw that Cowboys offense doing yesterday, I mean, the result of it was because you had number 21 in the backfield, but the execution for Dak Prescott was off the charts. I mean, on 3rd downs and in the red zone, he was outstanding. And that's where quarterbacks typically make their money. Dak Prescott yesterday was 5 of 7 on 3rd down passing, 122 yards and a touchdown. And then, of course, his team was perfect in the red area. So,
which was their biggest issue last year.
That was their biggest issue. They were 29th in red zone efficiency last year. They were perfect yesterday. So you see that the quarterback has developed, and they've cleaned up some of the overall issues that they had on the offensive side of the ball from a year ago. But a lot of that has to do with Dak Prescott being able to take his game to another level.
This was the best game Dak Prescott has played since the playoff game against Green Bay, his rookie season, where even though they lost, I thought he was spectacular, especially for a player in his first ever playoff game, going toe-to-toe with Aaron Rodgers, bringing his team back only to lose on a field goal at the very end. Dak did everything that I have questioned his ability to do. He was precise. He was on time. He was looking, not even necessarily going to his second read. He was doing that as well. But there were times where he knew what his read was, but he was looking as if there was a different read just to move the safety over, and then he was delivering strikes. If Dak plays like this, the Cowboys can go to the Super Bowl. Now, I don't know if Dak can play like this more than 2 or 3 times a season, but I wouldn't have expected him, even against the Giants, to play like this one time. And so it was statistically a game that only has happened 4 times in NFL history. That many yards, that many touchdowns, and a perfect passer rating. And we can't go without mentioning Kellen Moore. His first game as an offensive coordinator, he dialed up play after play that took advantage of what the Giants were allowing. You guys mentioned the split safeties. I just real quick, if I may ask you this, the way Troy was talking about it on TV, it was as if, well, why would you ever play split safeties? Like, obviously, it's right down the middle. There has to be a way to defend what Dak was doing, but the Giants couldn't adjust to it. The Giants couldn't make the adjustments to what Dak and the Cowboys offense were doing, and it led to the Cowboys offense, to me, making almost no mistakes.
Yeah, Canty was right. The Giants thought that they could take Dallas or negate their running game by playing cover 2. The minimum amount of people in the box. Zeke is not up to speed. No need for us to pack the box. That's how we're going to – and throwing against 5, 6 defenders in the secondary, typically young quarterbacks, it's going to give them more problems compared to, I'm getting ready to go out there, blitz them man-to-man. They make the reads easier. So that was the reason why. That cover 2. But that play action, linebackers, they can't play the middle of the field and get sucked up on the run with the run responsibility. So not only Kellen Moore, the play calling, but some of the window dressing, some of the pre-snap stuff, where, for instance, if they were going to line up in a bunch formation Last year, they would line up in a bunch formation, bunch right, toss right. This year, what they did was they lined the wide receiver up outside, bring him in motion, and they might start Zeke in the slot, bring him in motion first. So the different things that they set their players in to be able to identify where the defense was, are they playing man and zone, they gave Dak a little indicator and give him a little head start on where the ball's going to go. But the reason why I like what he did was because I think it's duplicatable. Reading defenses clearly, looking off safeties, those are things you can duplicate week in and week out. Anticipation. Young quarterbacks don't want to let the ball go into areas. You could see him doing that. And the number one thing that I thought was the most promising was he was driving the football down the field. And you don't see that unless guys got confidence. You could see him load up on his back leg, stride into it, and where the ball was hitting people. It wasn't down by their shoelaces. He was hitting people either in their numbers or up in their face mask. And that's what I like to be able to judge quarterbacks and on their accuracy. Can a guy catch it and do something with it? That was a big difference from the Dak I've seen in the first 3 years.
No, CC, you're right with all of those points. Another thing that I thought was encouraging was to see Dak Prescott use his legs to be able to extend plays or to be able to scramble
just to keep you honest,
to pick up first downs. I mean, when the defense had everything, out there executed to a T, Dak Prescott was the X factor. He was able to be that guy that defenses can't account for. There is no defense for a quarterback run. You just don't have it. The defense doesn't have enough numbers. And so Dak Prescott, you saw him early in that game show enough in the run game, being able to get first downs where you keep the defense honest, and now you keep the offense continuing to move the chains and get more opportunities. So I was impressed overall with what Dak was able to do. I was also impressed with Michael Gallup, the young receiver from the Dallas Cowboys, being able to develop, 158 yards receiving yesterday?
Yes. 7 catches on 7 targets, too.
It was unbelievable just seeing what he was able to do, catching the ball in traffic. Amari Cooper, I know he went over 100 yards receiving, but he also had a heck of a crack block on that run for a touchdown for Ezekiel Elliott.
Yes.
On Jabril Peppers, the giant strong safety. So when you have everybody buying in and everybody sacrificing for one another, that puts that team in a really good spot. And, I think the quarterback is a part of setting the tone for the team in terms of being able to do those little things that lead to winning.
One thing Colin Cowherd talks about is Dak might not be one of the best throwers, but you give him 30 or 40 million just because he's an adult voice in the room, he's a good leader, he's going to do all and say all the right things. Imagine playing a football game with over 100 million in guarantees that you've turned down and going out there, guys getting hurt. Like, they played in the late game. Those guys got hurt in that first game. So how do you remain calm when I haven't signed this deal? I know it's on the table. I know it's over 100 million in guarantees. To me, that says something about Dak Prescott, that the money's not going to change him, and to have that type of composure, I thought we should mention that.
Now imagine taking the team that you saw yesterday with the way Dak was running the offense and adding 100% of Ezekiel Elliott to it, and you have to imagine this could be a Super Bowl team.
Well, listen, what we had on the bottom of the screen a second ago was, if Dak plays like this, is this team on the fast track to the Super Bowl? The answer would be yes. If Dak plays like this, if Dak plays like one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the whole league, then absolutely yes. And I think your point of playing without fear, despite knowing that that was the biggest gamble Dak's taken his entire life, was taking the field yesterday before signing that contract, even if they are at the finish line, as Jerry put it. I think that's a great point, one I hadn't considered. And so, no, now, is it duplicable? Can he do it again? We'll see. But that was as good of a start for the Cowboys as you can possibly have for the season.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.